Hello everyone, I hope you all are doing well today. My name is Makeda Valletta, also known as the Body Scientist. And in case you're unfamiliar with me, I have a background in exercise and sports science, nutrition science. I'm a doula. I'm a strength and conditioning specialist, a USA Olympic weightlifting coach, a sports nutritionist, a dancer. I have just committed my life to studying all the ways to take our body to its highest level. I'm live on my IG right now. I will save this and repost it to my YouTube. Okay. So I talked about my background, right? For those of you who follow me, you know that I'm very much into looking at traditional ways of living. Okay. I'm very much into looking at what has shown to work over time. I'm very much into looking at anthropology and epidemiology. Okay. Epidemiology being who are the longest living, healthiest people in the world right now. What do they do? I mean, what are they eating? What are they doing? Looking at people who are developed properly. Because one thing I'm noticing about the younger generation especially, a lot of people in their early 20s, they don't look like they properly developed. I see that dudes look smaller bone structure. A lot of the women too look prepubescent, right? So you're not seeing... I remember being a little girl, and I remember I got milk commercials that used to come on TV, and they would have like the little kid, and then, you know, the adult version of them after drinking milk would step out of the mirror, and they were always strong and tall and well developed, good bone structure, stuff like that. I'm very much, as a strength and conditioning specialist, okay, because my background is in exercise and sports science, but with a concentration in strength and conditioning, okay, so. And prior to that, I was in biotechnology, okay? Then I also had a minor in sports nutrition. So I've taken a lot of biology, microbiology, organic chemistry, biochemistry, physiology, kinesiology, anatomy, biomechanics. I've taken a lot of the hard sciences and the applied sciences. But also as a practitioner, as somebody who's been a dancer my entire life, as somebody who played multiple sports, as somebody who has been training clients for over 20 years, right? I also have that knowledge as well, because sometimes you have people who are in academia and they're not practitioners. So they do research, but they don't work with people. Then you have people who are practitioners. They may coach, they may train, but they don't read research. A lot of practitioners don't read research, right? And so I've always been the balance between the two. The practitioner who is always reading research, but also using my critical thinking skills and also understanding the limitations that exist within Western science. For those of you who follow me, you know I always say that Western science doesn't confirm anything that we haven't already known. I put a lot that indigenous people didn't already know, okay? And there's certain things that indigenous people knew, like certain plants they used, and where Western science still doesn't really understand all the mechanisms of action or why that works the way it did or why they did certain things the way they did. But I highly respect that, which is why when it comes to nutrition, I'm always speaking about traditional foods, organ meats. Every culture in the world, I don't care if they were Asians, Africans, Native Americans, Polynesians, Europeans, everybody in the world ate organ meats, okay? Whether it be from a pig, a goat, a lamb, a deer, a pig, a chicken, everybody ate organ meats, okay? Every culture had fermented foods, whether it be fermented plant foods like sauerkraut and pickles and kimchi and cortado, or whether it be fermented dairy like yogurts like you see in India, and cheeses and sour cream, okay? So whether it be, every culture had that as well. And every culture consumed bone broth, which is critical for the health of your gut, the health of your bones, the integrity of your skin, your immune system. And I don't care if it was Africans, Native Americans, Asians, everybody consumed broth. So you see these similarities, right? And I look at what people, how they're built, how long they live, that were eating these traditional foods. Every time I see somebody there's a woman in Haiti who died who was like 100 and something, okay? Every time I see somebody who's like, oh, my grandmother died and she was 104, 106, they're always from a pork-eating country, first of all. And I'm sure, like if you're from Haiti, I'm sure that woman was eating pork. If she's from Georgia, I'm sure that woman was eating pork, okay? So this is like an area of research for me for the past 20 years. But I also have an extensive background in nutritional biochemistry. So I understand, like, biochemically, there is no vitamin D and vitamin A in plants, okay? And people never got it from plants. People got it from eating liver, okay? And eating some butter, all right? Eating pork fat, so fish eggs, okay? So with that being said, the other side of me, outside of nutrition, is the strength and conditioning side, right? And strength and conditioning is different than the regular fitness industry, okay? The fitness industry, like general personal trainers, they're about a look. They're about aesthetic things. Like, okay, somebody wants to lose 10 pounds. They want to look a certain way. They want to sculpt their abs a certain way. They want to sculpt their glutes a certain way. Now, I always say I am not a bodybuilding trainer. That's not my philosophy. Bodybuilding is not about health or function. In fact, bodybuilders a lot of times, this is a general statement, but a lot of times they're extremely unhealthy because the way they eat and train is not for function, health, or longevity. It is they manipulate food and exercises to achieve a certain look, okay? And so because the strength and conditioning coach, what we do, we take an athlete over the competitive season, okay? And we look at the biomechanical and physiological demands of that sport or position. We look at the common injuries, any current injuries that athlete might have, because you're only as strong as your weakest link, right? And we design workouts in the weight room to increase performance and decrease injury, okay? To increase performance and decrease injury, which are interrelated, okay? So if you're a sprinter, you want to strength train so you can be more explosive out the blocks and run faster and maintain that speed and accelerate. But you also want to prevent getting hamstring tears. And they're interlinked because if you get a hamstring tear, you can't perform at your best, right? So injury prevention, performance, increasing performance, increasing vertical jumps, how hard somebody's throwing, and so that, and there's certain periodization methods that's used for that. So that's totally different than the body, and also athletes have to perform. Bodybuilders pose. They get on stage, they pose, they flex, right? Does that bodybuilder have agility? Do they have power, explosiveness? Do they have muscular endurance, cardiovascular endurance, any of that? Okay? A lot of times they have no athletic skill. They're just posing. So there's a difference between and a lot of the fitness industry is based off of bodybuilding ideologies, okay? Strength and conditioning is very different. So with that being said, my whole approach to fitness, okay, is functional as well. But I know that working in the fitness industry, a lot of people, they want to look. So there's this white guy named Bret Contreras, okay? Bret Contreras. And I respect him. He has a PhD in glutology, okay? So he did his area of study in building the glutes, and he's a bodybuilder. So building the glutes from a aesthetic standpoint, not necessarily from a can I jump higher or run faster standpoint, okay? Which is a little bit different. They can overlap, but they're a little bit different in the program design and stuff like that, right? And your goals and what you're measuring. But today I saw, and in my field, in the field of strength and conditioning, black women, you never see black women. So I know that, when I was much younger, I had dreams of being well respected in that field. But I know that in science in general, okay, you don't have a lot of black women, but then when you're talking about the sports sciences, it's mostly white men. Then you have, I would say white women and black men are about equal in terms of how much you see them, which is not a lot, and then you have black women being at the bottom. I've never seen a black woman strength and conditioning coach. I know a black volleyball player, woman in LA, who told me that she knew a couple, but I've never seen them. Not at a conference, okay? So I know that being a woman, being black, a lot of times, this is a white man's world. A lot of times they're not really trying to listen to what you have to say. And then also, I feel the fitness world, okay, not necessarily the sports world. It depends, okay. Sports training world can be kind of white too, but especially the fitness world can be very whitewashed. So, but like I said, I respect his research. So he had posted something today saying that if any trainer bashes, if you follow any trainer who bashes an exercise, you should just unfollow them, right? And because he was saying that there's no exercise that deserves being bashed. And I said, well, except for exercises that can contribute to dislocating a woman's uterus, right? And so when I wrote that, I got probably 100 comments from men and women, okay, all laughing at me, acting like, oh, that's so ridiculous. What are you talking about? And so I started to, explain it. So for those of you who follow my work for a while, you know some of this backstory, but some of you may not. But I told you, I've dedicated my life to studying all the ways to take our body to its highest level. There are many things that I've studied over the years. One of my areas of intense research has been the pelvic floor, okay? Has been the muscles that support the pelvic floor and the muscles, in men and women, but especially in women, since we have a uterus and we have a different center of gravity than men. There's different considerations that have to be taken with women, even with female athletes. And, female athletes are more prone to ACL injuries, okay? And a lot of that has to do with something called acute angle, which is an angle between our hips and our knees, and how our landing biomechanics, and then also where we are in our cycle, okay? All of that makes female athletes more prone to ACL tears, more so than males, right? There are differences, even when it comes to concussions or how CTE manifests itself in male athletes versus female athletes. But most of the research is done on men, okay? Just like in medicine, same is true in exercise and sports sciences. Most of the research is done on men and applied to women. But women are not little men, just like kids are not little adults, okay? What kids and babies need, totally different than what adults need, okay? Because kids and babies are not little adults. Women are not little men. So what I mean by that is, if you do research on men, you can't then, this is what has been done in the past. They'll do research on men, and let's say they discover that men need this amount of a certain nutrient, or men can metabolize this amount of alcohol. Then they'll say women are only slightly smaller than men, so we'll just deduct a little bit off because it's a woman, so they're just lessen the amount or something. But it's more complicated than that. Women have different systems, okay? We have different systems. We have, different hormonal systems, and we have different bone structures. And because we have a uterus, we have our hips, woman's center of gravity is lower than a male's center of gravity. The men's center of gravity is more like up here. The woman's center of gravity is more down here, okay? So there are certain, then you have women who give birth. I mean, there's a lot of different considerations that need to be given to the female athlete or the exercising female body that is completely ignored, okay? So, I'm also a doula. So for those of you who don't know, doulas help women in childbirth. And back in this is 2013, so maybe about 10 years ago now, okay? About 10 years ago, I discovered a woman named Pakistani who I could talk about her for hours, okay? She's one of my favorite people on earth, and I will always study with her. She's one of the realest people. And I'm very picky about who my teachers are, okay? So when I talk about, so I'm going to tie this in. Okay, so back about 10 years ago, I always call her a womb chiropractor. She, talked about how, because I had heard about Mayan abdominal womb massage, right? Which is, from the person I first heard about it from, came from the Mayans, and it was a way of massaging the womb and manipulating a woman's uterus, okay? Because it's important for a woman's uterus to be perfectly centered. And this is one of the things that Pakistani taught me. She's in LA, right? Mexican. She talks about how in Mesoamerican traditional medicine, which is also Mexican traditional medicine, that it was extremely important for a woman's uterus to be perfectly centered, okay? And if it wasn't perfectly centered, okay, it's tilted to the left, or it's tilted to the right, or it's tilted back, it can cause digestive problems, hormonal problems, fibroids, cysts, painful menstrual cycles, back pain, okay, painful sex. All of these things can be caused by a uterus not being in the right place, right? And I've studied this extensively with her, not just studying with her in terms of her talking about it and showing things, but I have watched her and assisted her in working on several people. And every single time I learned something new. And I saw, in me having a background in fitness, whenever I would meet women that have back pain, my thinking would be, oh, she needs to strengthen her back muscles. Oh, your back hurts. Whenever you have pain in a joint, you want to strengthen the muscles around that joint because muscles are shock absorbers. So I'd always think, oh, you have back pain. You want to strengthen your back. But when I saw with Parkazani, I saw her work on a woman who came in and some of these women didn't even say they had back pain. But once she adjusted their uterus, because what she would do is palpate a woman and feel if all her internal organs were in the right place. The uterus, the bladder, the ovaries, and feeling all of that, feeling if it's in the right place. And if it's not in the right place, she would, manipulate it and move it into the right place. Because if, the uterus is contained in a sac with other organs. So if the uterus starts to drop down, then that can pull on the lungs and cause breathing problems. If the uterus is tilted to the left or the right, it can put pressure on the intestines, and now you have digestive problems. If it's tilted a certain way and there's pressure on your ovary, it can cause hormonal problems. Okay, so there's a variety of issues that can come from this, and there's a lot of things that can be done to alleviate this that Western medicine does not talk about at all. Okay, they'll tell a woman, oh yeah, uterus is tilted to the left, and that's normal. It's not normal. It's common, but it's not normal. Okay, and it's not healthy. It's not the healthy state that we should be in. And there are indigenous practices that address that. So I made a video with her in Costa Rica. We taught a workshop together in Costa Rica probably about 10 years ago now. I don't know if that workshop was in 2013 or 2015, but it was a while ago. Okay, and we made a video talking about exercises that are bad for the womb, and another one, exercises that are good for the womb. But she was the first one I had heard speak about how certain exercises that women do can move the uterus out of place, because there are several things that can cause a woman's uterus to be moved out of place, okay? It can be any kind of abdominal surgery, whether it be a C-section or any other kind of abdominal surgery, because whenever we have surgery and we get cut open, scar tissue forms, okay? And that scar tissue pulls whatever surrounding organs around it, it pulls it towards it, okay? So if a woman has adhesions, abdominal adhesions from some type of surgery, that scar tissue can cause the organs to start getting pulled out of place. Childbirth, okay, can cause the uterus to be pulled out of place. And that's whether it's a C-section or a vaginal birth. Also, stress and trauma can cause that. Foods that are bad for your digestive system, that are causing digestive issues, digestive issues can cause that. The uterus and the digestive system are interlinked. What's good for your uterus is good for your digestive system, and vice versa. Okay? And because your intestines are surrounding the uterus, if somebody has digestive issues and intestinal issues, it definitely can affect that. Also, a woman lifting things incorrectly. Okay? And when she brought this up, about how women lifting things incorrectly can cause her uterus to shift out of place. And the way that she explained it, like there were certain, I remember when we had this conversation, the exercises that she explained were exercises that I also did not give my clients, because I always looked at exercises from a functional standpoint, not from an aesthetic standpoint, okay? Like I said, the general trainers and the bodybuilders, they look at exercise and working out from an aesthetic standpoint. For me, I always looked at it from a functional standpoint, okay? I'm a strength and conditioning coach certified by the National Strength and Conditioning Association. They publish journals, the Journal of Strength and Conditioning, okay? All the research in there is strictly about the effectiveness of exercises on function. Like, what are the best exercises to prevent hamstring tears? What are the best exercises to increase a vertical jump? What are the best exercises to increase explosiveness out the blocks? What are the best exercises to engage the abs to help in core strength with throwing a baseball? Okay, they're functional. So if I didn't see, can crunches and sit-ups be kind of productive for the womb health? Yes, they can, and we do talk about that in that video. And I want to revisit that because they can be. I think I reposted that video, but we talk about that. And sometimes it has to do with the technique of how you execute something. Sometimes it's not the exercise itself, but it's your technique. And also, And it's funny because she has no background in kinesiology or anything, but everything that she explained made complete sense when it came to technique. It was in complete alignment with what I already understand with execution. Or why I didn't give certain exercises to clients, because I felt like it didn't make any sense. I didn't know. I couldn't see a functional purpose, not knowing that it could be stress in a woman's uterus, okay? So there are exercises that are okay for men that's just not good for women, and or, there's women who are dealing with different situations. So all those things have to be taken into account. Now, when I explain that, what I'm saying, and there was a whole bunch of male and female fitness professionals on that page that were just making fun of what I was saying and acting like, oh, that's so ridiculous. And so I started to look up studies, because right now, I'm actually in a grad program right now in medical cannabis science, okay? And I have this conflict. Sometimes I don't want to talk about it too much publicly, but I've always had this conflict since the last grad program I was in, which was like almost 20 years ago now, okay? I believe in Western science. I have an extensive background in Western science, and I see the validity, the value of it, right? But one thing that turned me off in my first program was the fact that they would just make fun of indigenous science. Like, anything that Western science is about what we can observe, what we can measure, and there are these rigorous things of what, but to me, when you see, like, when it comes to food, okay, to me, there's no debate about what is the healthiest food to eat. When we see that we're sicker now than we've ever been, okay, since we've been on the planet, this younger generation is looking little and sickly as hell, okay? They're weak in every way, physically, mentally, everything else, okay? And you can see when you look at the people who live the longest, who are the strongest, who have the best built bodies, what did they eat, what did they do? And for generations, okay? It wasn't too long ago, women were giving birth to like 13 kids like it was nothing. So you have to look at the measurable things. There are measurable things that measure health and longevity. And so when you look at it that way, whether it's now or in the past, and you see what has worked for generations, that tells you a lot. That's why I'm like, get away from me with the almond milk and the macadamia nut milk and all that shit. Because people have been drinking cow's milk, goat's milk, sheep's milk, camel's milk since the beginning of time, and they have thrived on it, right? So, and then the Western science, I could break it down to Western science level and tell you why raw animal milk, okay, is better than a plant-based milk. Now, I'm not going to drink human milk. Some people drink human milk. I'd rather drink it from a cow. But human milk, cow milk, sheep, just animal milk is highly nutritious, okay? And many cultures around the world have drank it for years. For generations, for thousands of years, okay? So I feel like Western science a lot of times doesn't value these things. And I find the same true with cannabis. You know what I'm saying? With cannabis, there's history of its use for thousands of years. And there's ways in which it was used that Western science hasn't studied yet, doesn't understand yet, so they're just dismiss it. Or because their studies, like using it during pregnancy and breastfeeding. That's a whole topic, okay? That is even hard for a lot of people. I respect the people who speak openly about it and really are open about it, because there's a lot of PC demonizing around that, and, a lot of people aren't looking at traditional practices and uses, okay, which is, to me, is important. So because I'm in this class already, and I'm already having this conflict, right, with, like, I'm actually in a class right now that's really dealing with research and different types of research and, the different levels of evidence and stuff like that. And so I said, you know what, that's what some people speak. Some people don't understand indigenous cosmology. If I try to explain from an indigenous science, ancestral science, they won't value that. So I have to speak their language, right? And sometimes when I'm talking to people who are non-Western science, I have to speak their language. I'll go back and forth. I'll tell you the indigenous science way, or I'll tell you the Western science way, okay? I could do both. So I looked up a bunch of studies. I was surprised, actually, because I felt like this hadn't been researched that much. And I feel like it still hasn't been researched enough. But there are a number of studies that talk about female runners, okay? How actually, a lot of studies are saying that, like, 1 in 4 women have prolapsed uterus, some degree of it. Now, when I say a prolapsed uterus, it doesn't mean always that a woman's uterus is in her vagina. That is a prolapsed uterus. When the uterus can drop down into the vaginal canal. But there are also prolapse uteruses where it didn't drop down that far, but it still dropped. Okay. You can also have uterus that is not, that's the Western scientific term, but you can also have it where it's like left, tilted to the left, tilted to the right, tilted back. Whereas in Western science, prolapse refers to the drop. But in Mesoamerican science, it refers to anything that's not center. Okay. So all of that's an issue, right? And so, so in the studies, they talk about pelvic floor disorder. Pelvic floor disorder is what they were calling it, PFD. So many studies saying that women runners have a high incidence of pelvic floor disorder. Female gymnasts have an extremely high level. They said like 50% or something of pelvic floor disorder. Powerlifters, okay? Now, I told you that I'm a USA Olympic weightlifting coach, right? So Olympic weightlifting is, I don't know if you've seen cleans and jerks and snatches. That's when somebody got like 400 pounds in the ground, 250 pounds, whatever. And they get down and they throw it up above their head and land in a squat or land in a lunge. Or if you don't know what it is, look it up, because I'm not going to get up and demonstrate it. But those are Olympic lifts. So it's actually a sport in the Olympics. But power athletes also perform these lifts. Football players, basketball, track. Power athletes will perform them in their training. But it's actually an Olympic sport, Olympic weightlifting, which is not powerlifting. Two different things. Powerlifting is when somebody is seeing how much weight they can deadlift at one time, how much weight they can bench press at one time. Olympic weightlifting is not this one exercise. You're taking this weight from down here on the floor and you're throwing it up above your head in one big movement. Okay? It's going through the whole body. It's an explosive dynamic event. Okay? It's totally different. So, powerlifters, okay? Women powerlifters have a high incidence of pelvic floor dysfunction. Now, preventing that, a lot of that has to do with how you execute, like how you execute from a deep place. Training these deep muscles, okay? I told you I'm also a dancer, right? Now, I've studied many different forms of dance. I grew up studying classical ballet and tap at Dance Theater Harlem and Harlem School of the Arts. Then as an adult, I got really into dances of the African diaspora, particularly in the Americas. So I've studied extensively stuff from Haiti, stuff from Puerto Rico, stuff from Cuba, stuff from Colombia. I said Puerto Rico, I think, DR, Brazil, and the Congo, okay? I've never resonated with the West African, which is, and I put it in quotes because in America, what we call West African dance to the djembe is a very generic thing that I've never even really seen West Africans do too much. But it's a certain style, this djembe dancing. That doesn't resonate with me, okay? Then you have this, in New York, you can find Sabar, which is a dance from Senegal, which is very different than the dances in the Americas, okay? Whether it be the Caribbean, whether it be South America, whether it be North America. You have Congo Square in New Orleans, okay? Oh yeah, I didn't get to that, the Congo. So the dances in the Americas are very much Congo derived, okay? Jamaican dancehall, straight Congolese, okay? Rumba, Afro-Cuban rumba from Cuba, straight Congolese, okay? Merengue from DR, Congolese. Haitian compa, but even a lot of the folklore dances in Haiti, straight Congolese. Samba from Brazil, Congolese. Bomba from Puerto Rico, huge Congo background. Champeta from Colombia, straight Congolese, okay? And I can keep soca and calypso dancing from Trinidad, Congolese. And in New Orleans, you have Congo Square. And the Congo dances are very hip-centered, very intense hip movements, shoulders, head, footwork, not a lot of jumping. Occasionally there are jumping movements, but it's not a lot. Whereas like the West African, the Sabar, it's a lot more jumpy, okay? Now, so, and I'm saying this to say, because you think about the research. A lot of this research was talking about how female gymnasts and runners, because of that impact, is causing uterine issues. But, and I think about the Congo dances, which aren't like that, but it's very womb-centered. But then I know that there are West African dances that are more jumpy. Now, I'm not a huge student of those dances. I know some things because, like if you're studying stuff from Haiti and Cuba, like in Haiti, there's a dance called Igbo. And Igbo comes from a certain tribe in Nigeria, the Igbo tribe. But this Igbo dance in Haiti is not done by Igbos in Nigeria. It specifically comes from the Igbos in Haiti, their experience in Haiti, right? Or you have Orisha dances in Cuba and Brazil that are coming from the Yoruba. So like there's, but how it is executed over here is not exactly the same as how it is over there. So that's why I always say I study more of the stuff over here. So I can't speak from like a level of expertise for those dances, but so I don't know if the women, jump just as much. I mean, they seem to be fine having babies, I don't know. But I'm just going to say, though, so there's more to be said about that. And I'll go more into that on my OnlyFans page, actually. I'm going to go more into a lot of this on that page. But for sure, okay, our uterus, there are ligaments and tendons that are supporting our uterus. And just like any other ligaments, any other muscles, okay, all muscles in the body need to be worked. Actually, I talked about being a doula, but back in 2007, I started teaching a class to women called Central Strength Training, okay? I haven't taught it in some years, and I feel like maybe time to bring it back. But there's a class I taught to women called Central Strength Training, and there's 3 components to the class. One component was using crystal eggs internally in the vaginal canal to get women to strengthen the vaginal muscles, get more control of the vaginal muscles, more awareness, but also helps to strengthen the muscles of the pelvic floor. The other part was strength training for the whole body. So teaching women why it's important to, strengthen everything, okay? Whether it be, your legs, your arms, your back, your chest, like everybody needs to strengthen their whole body. And you need to know how to do it correctly. And I felt like a lot of women were afraid of lifting weights. A lot of women thought, I'm going to get big and bulky, which is not true. So that's also important, right? And when we strength train, it increases our testosterone too, which increases your sex drive. But strength training keeps up your lean body mass, which helps you age well, and helps everything stay together and give you a shape and help you perform, okay? And so the third part of it was dances from the African diaspora, in the Americas in particular, like Congo-based, maybe you could say, but not all Congo-based, but mostly black dances from the Americas, Afro-Indigenous, that involved intense hip movements to get women to connect to their hips and, have more control over the hips. And we also store a lot of trauma, okay, in our womb and our hips. And Western science may not recognize that, but it's true, okay? And a lot of that can also come out when women are pregnant or, in labor, okay? So these are things that, and I try not to get too mystical on this page. I try to keep it more scientific because not everybody respects the indigenous sciences. But for me, I highly respect the indigenous sciences, and I have a background in Western science. And sometimes I feel like I can have my own doubts of why I'm doing this, because who am I trying to prove this to? But I feel like sometimes like having the credentials gives you, maybe you'll be taken more seriously when you say certain things. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? So I have my own conflicts with it. And there's validity in both, but I definitely find that Western science just completely ignores. I feel like it's important to look at both, actually. Okay. There's so much I could say about that, but it's just interesting that I feel like in fitness, there's no talk. Nobody talks about the woman's uterus and it being shifted out of place by exercises. But when I'm seeing the other studies I was finding too was CrossFit. Because Pankazani talked about this too, which I didn't know this. I know as a strength and conditioning coach. I told you, I'm an Olympic weightlifting coach, and I'm a strength and conditioning coach. So program design is important. And what I know about CrossFit, because CrossFit will use Olympic lifts and stuff like that. But there are work to rest ratios that are very important, okay? Work to rest ratios that are very important when you're doing strength and power exercises. These guidelines are in place for a reason. Because why? Because as a strength and conditioning coach, our job is to increase performance and decrease injury. Okay? That is not what a regular personal trainer does. That is not what a bodybuilder does. Okay? So, safety. Safety and measurable effectiveness. If you overtrain yourself, you can injure yourself and or not get the results you need. The strength and power gains you're trying to get, you won't get them because you overtrain yourself. Or you injure yourself, okay? And you're not supposed to injure yourself when you are training to prevent injury. Okay? It's not supposed to happen. That happens if the program is poorly designed. In CrossFit, you have a lot of injuries. Okay, you could ask physical therapists. Their businesses have been booming because of people injuring themselves on CrossFit. But I remember Powerlifters telling me years ago, okay, and you guys should definitely find her. Okay, she's on Instagram, Indigimama, Indigisquela. I'll put her below. She doesn't have a YouTube presence, but she's on Instagram and has a website and everything. But, darn it, I lost my train of thought about what I was going to say. Oh, I forgot. I just totally forgot my thought. But, I don't know. It was about the exercises. The exercises. All I know is that strengthening the pelvic floor is important for women. It's important for men. But not overly tensing it either. You know what I'm saying? You need to have that right balance of, like, you want elasticity. Same thing with the vaginal canal. You don't want your vaginal muscles just tight and constricted and stuck. You need elasticity. Some type of, oh yeah, I was talking about injuries in CrossFit. Thank you. Yeah, so what I was going to say was that Pakistani back then had said to me, she brought up the fact that in this commercial, there was a CrossFit commercial where they said, pee happens, right? And so apparently it was talking about women peeing on themselves when they're doing CrossFit. And there was a whole ad campaign saying pee happens. And I'm like, and we talked about it back then because she's like, no, you're not supposed to exercise till you pee on yourself. That is a sign that your uterus is dropped, okay? That's not healthy. It's not normal. And I've never peed on myself in my whole life, okay? For any reason. Except probably when I was a baby and I don't remember it. But I'm definitely not peeing on myself while I'm working out. That's a problem. Okay? And they were advertising that like that was okay. So this is what I'm saying. Like, there are certain exercises that if they're too strenuous for you, you're not executing them properly. Your muscles aren't strong enough for this exercise that can cause a woman's uterus to shift out of place. That can then cause other problems. And for me, you have to have tough skin in this day and age, but it's just interesting. Like, this is the reason why I don't mingle with a lot of trainers or nutritionists. I'm very picky about who I mingle with, who I collaborate with, and who I learn from. And, it's like a lot of people don't use their critical thinking skills. And to me, for so many people to just be making fun of that when it's like, you have all these women too, who a lot of women have had babies. I've seen plenty of women have issues after that. They're having incontinence issues. And so to just think that, to just dismiss it, like it's just crazy, it says a lot, So, yeah, a lot of these fitness professionals out here, and just, I don't know, even medical professionals, like, because of them ignoring indigenous science so much, and people don't use their critical thinking skills. People don't seek information outside of a lot of times what they're being told in school and what they're being indoctrinated with. And while I respect school, I respect academia, and sometimes I don't even want to say too much on social platforms because I never know who's watching, which is why I started my OnlyFans page so I can just really speak freely about how I feel about certain things. But to me, it's just a thing of not becoming indoctrinated. You know what I'm saying? Like, still learning what you have to learn, but using your critical thinking skills, using what you've learned, the skills you've learned, the knowledge you've learned, to continue looking at studies and using critical thinking skills and looking at interdisciplinary topics and understanding how it works together. Because that's what indigenous science is about, interdisciplinary, okay? So I have so much more to say on this topic. Really, this video was going to be about that, just the whole the uterus being dislocated. But I just will add this real quick before I leave, because Pakistani, I was already planning on doing this video, but then she did a video right before I started this one, and it kind of brought up some other things for me, where she was talking about vaginal steaming, and I learned the art of vaginal steaming with herbs. I learned it from her, okay, from Mexican-American traditional medicine, which other cultures also do it, okay? There are cultures in the Caribbean, in South America, in Asia, okay? There's a long history of women taking herbs, putting in a pot of hot water, squatting over it with no underwear or whatever, covering like a sheet around us and letting us absorb it in medicinally. I have a video where I speak about that, so I won't get super in-depth about it. But it serves many purposes. And one of the things that she talks about is not having a cold uterus. Like, for a woman, how our womb area needs to be warm. Okay, and vaginal steaming is one of the ways to do that. I will say another way to do that are the womb center dances, okay? When you're intensely dancing and moving your hips and bringing your mental attention here, okay? Which is one of the reasons why I taught that in my classes, because when you're doing intense hip movements, you have to bring your brain here in order to manipulate. The more you think about any part of your body, okay? The more you mentally visualize any part of your body as you are moving that body. Anytime you mentally bring your attention to any body part, like let's say I bring my attention to my quad, right? So and then I straighten my leg to make it harder, right? And so I'm focusing on lifting my leg up. I can just lift my leg up and I'm not thinking, I'm just lifting my leg up. I'm just thinking about whatever. Or I could lift my leg up and I'm mentally visualizing my quadricep, which goes from my knee to my hip. I'm visualizing my quadricep shortening, okay, to lift my leg up. It's shortening, it's contracting. When I do that, when I actually visualize the muscle contracting as I'm contracting it, you get a more powerful muscle contraction. Your central nervous system grows more nerves to those muscles. And the more nerves that innervate a muscle, the more control you have over that muscle and the more feeling you have in that muscle, okay? So there's a whole neuromuscular side to exercise, all right? And so, and then also increases the circulation to that area too. It increases the when you're working a muscle and when you're thinking about it, because blood goes also where your mind goes, it increases that blood flow, that warmth, right? So doing dances that really incorporate hip movements and intense hip movements and circles and undulations and, all of that will also bring warmth to the womb, okay? As will good sex. Good, juicy, pleasurable sex will also do the same thing. If you think about it, people talk about the chakras. Fire is in the root chakra. Fire is in the root chakra, right? That's that fire energy. So we need to keep it warm, okay? That's more important for women, okay, than it is for men. For women, you need to keep it warm. So that's what I'm saying. There are certain considerations for the female body. And these things get overlooked and not talked about because all of the research is done on men. And most people, including a lot of women, don't even realize how little they know about the female body, okay? So I just had to make this, and I'm like, I just need to write books. I need to write my books already because I'm not trying to prove myself to certain people, but at the same time, I'm like, nobody's listening to this black woman. Nobody thinks I know what I'm talking about. So I'm just going to have to write it in books and put all the studies and the research. That's all. Yeah, so I hope you guys learned something. If you did, please like it, please share it. On my YouTube page, I'll post a lot of the studies below the YouTube video. And yeah, have a good day, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye.